Hello and welcome to ChitChat episode 5. We are here live with my co-host Jason Hancock and our wonderful guest Chris Rowlands today from NPC Cast fame and also his upcoming game The Last Garden with 1000 XP Publishing. Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I love your definition of fame.
Oh, yeah.
Because we have like 2,000 subscribers, so I guess that's as famous as it gets.
Come on now. You already have one successful microgame under. Like, that's good. That's something.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Jason, how you doing?
I'm doing well. And yourself?
I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
That's how I'm doing.
Aww.
Oh, just the world is a little bit up in the air, so I'm not going to say I'm good for a very long while, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
But in general, I'm okay.
All things considered.
Yeah, I'm still living, and I can travel domestically without any trouble getting on or off a plane, so...
Yes.
Me, I'm doing just fine.
Right. I know, huh?
Sorry, I'll just bring down everything. I'm Debbie Downer today, but... So today we invited my friend Chris here, who is also a coworker, onto the show because we wanted to give him a plug for his upcoming game and kind of talk to him about the struggles of both building your first major Kickstarter, which is a huge ordeal, building a publishing company with a partner, and then some of the kind of other things that has brought up, like logistics and things. Building a publishing company is a whole nother world, so I thought it'd be really fun to have him here. Before we get started, though, Chris, would you like to do a little introduction of yourself?
Sure. My name is Chris Rowlands. I am known as NPC Chris on Twitter and various social media avenues. I am primarily a game designer. I also host a podcast called NPC Cast, and we sort of started that 4 years ago because we wanted to be able to give back to the gaming community and kind of get involved with the gaming community. And at the time, making content seemed like a great way to do that. So we started NPC Cast, which is a tabletop games podcast. We focus primarily on role-playing games these days, but we do cover board games, mini games, card games, all that good stuff as well. And then recently, about a year ago, I think, officially, I started a publishing company called 1000 XP. And the whole goal of that company is to publish board games and to create content around board games. And our desire is to inspire imagination and encourage creativity. So if you go to youtube.com/1000XP, you'll see some of our videos there. And it's primarily a place where we encourage folks to try their hand at game design. We're really super excited to try to inspire people and to get people kind of hype about making stuff, whether it's for, their home game or if they decide to want to eventually take it to publication. We're kind of there to get them going. We're the Bob Ross of game design, is how I like to put it.
Now, tell me a little bit. So your game design partner is Matt Christensen, right?
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about how long you and Matt have known each other.
Oh my, how old am I now? I'm 34. I met Matt when I was in 7th grade. So whatever that math is, about over 20 years. We've known each other and we were good friends. We went to the same middle school and we kind of knew each other through a mutual friend. And then we sort of re-encountered each other at a local game store. When I was younger, I basically grew up in friendly local game stores. That's why I'm so proud to be able to work in an awesome one right now. And that sort of was like my entire circle of friends. My entire social life was, surrounding this game store that I grew up in. And Matt was one of those people that I've played games with my entire life. We did a lot of minis games. We did a lot of Magic the Gathering, a lot of board games. So even as we sort of grew older and I kind of got out of board games a little bit while I was in college, we still obviously were very, very good friends. And then when I got back into it, we sort of started designing together. his idea was the sort of genesis for The Last Garden, which is the game that we have coming on Kickstarter towards the end of February. And he brought this idea to us, to us being our play group at the time, and I decided to help him design it, and we kind of went from there. But we've been good friends for a very long time, so yeah.
Which I think is pretty awesome when you guys are talking about your game when you're in the same room, like at the same table. It's really fun to listen to you bounce back and forth because you have a good natural rhythm about it. Not one of you takes over the situation. It's really fun to speak with you about game.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
The Last Garden is a pretty interesting game. I've played it a couple of times now. One was almost a year ago, and one was just very recently because we're getting ready to get into the Kickstarter. I'm hoping you to even do a preview video for it. And it's a very interesting theme. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So The Last Garden is the story of the last human on Earth. She is the queen of Earth. She's an elderly woman, and she has basically discovered all these robots, and she's reprogrammed them into robotnists, and is using these robotnists to build an artificial...
Hold on. Just say that again. Just say it again, nice and slow.
She's reprogrammed them into what she refers to as robotnists, and she's using these...
Good.
She's using these robotnists to build an artificial garden in the wastelands of the post-apocalypse to bring some beauty back into the world. So that's kind of her whole goal. In this game, she actually, you're going to be manipulating gems, but she's actually building this garden out of precious metals and gems because, when you're the last person on Earth, they don't really have much more value. You might as well put them into something pretty. So that's kind of what she's doing with them. The players will control groups of these robotnists trying to compete by any means necessary to become the queen's favorite group of robotnists. So...
Nice.
See, that's the kind of term that I feel like you can just, if you say the word robotness, you just want to make a game about it. Like, it's that perfect thing.
Yeah, it was actually, so, like you mentioned, we've been designing this game for a while, and it was actually at Dragonflight last year, so not the most recent one, but the one before that. We were doing some public play tests there with the game, and we already had, like, the storyline and everything together, and then, I don't know, we were in the car going to get, like, lunch or something, and I just said the word robotnists, and at first we were laughing really hard, and then we're like, okay, wait, no, this actually has to be what she calls them, right? And it was, like, obviously... and then there were people that actually wanted us to name it Robotnists, which, who knows, if the Kickstarter fails, maybe we'll do a rebrand and it'll just be Robotnists, the Robotnists game, because it's clearly the best idea to come out of the entire process.
It is a fabulous idea. But when I say to you, so Jason, if I say to you, I have a card game called The Robotnists, what does that say to you?
The Robotnists, that would totally spark my interest on the name alone. Of checking out farther. Yeah, I would totally go for that name. Not that The Last Garden is bad, but the name itself, it does. It sparks a keen interest right away.
It's a silly, which I wouldn't call The Last Garden silly.
It has its moments. Depending on the group, it can be silly. But for us, The Last Garden... It added a little bit of like gravitas to it. We picture the story more along the lines of like a Pixar movie. This is like WALL-E level where it's not completely like super serious and dark, but it's also not entirely wacky Robo Rally where you're just going around with all these like robots. It's a little bit in between, and we like the core concept and of this sort of melancholy story, because it does certainly have like some, more kind of serious elements to it. And we just like that. And so we went with The Last Garden. Like I said, maybe if it doesn't work, we'll see what happens. But we've decided that we are going to stand behind this game and make the game that we wanted to make. We've told the story before, but this game actually was picked up by a publisher who wanted to publish it, but they wanted to change the theme of it, which I absolutely understand from their standpoint why they'd want to do that. But we kind of searched within our hearts and we're like, you know what? We need to try to make this our story into a game. So that's what we did.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I think, especially when it's one of your first games, it's kind of your baby at that point, and someone coming in and saying, well, we're going to change it. We're going to make it this way or that way. It takes something away from you.
Yeah, and you know, to bring it up to the publisher thing, where we're starting a publishing company out of this, you know, it does. I'm trying to take our personal bias out of the equation when it comes to a business perspective. I just also happen to think that from a branding and marketing perspective, the story of us telling the story of the game in the way that we want to tell it is a powerful, you know, marketing and branding tool. And so it's not that I personally think that it's a very smart way to go about it, to do something quirky and different in a world where there's more and more games coming out all the time. We're going to take that chance and do something that we think is really unique.
I would agree. I don't think you can go wrong in today's age of board games of doing, even if it's a tweak on a theme. It's an apocalyptic theme, but it's a tweak on that theme. So it's something familiar, but yet it'll be a nice twist. I like it.
Thank you.
And can I mention that the art is also really, it's very unique feeling, it's very unique looking, to me at least, and it's done by Beth Sobel.
Yay!
Who's so fabulous. Yeah, exactly. Everyone loves Beth.
That's a sell right there. I mean,
she's amazing. The awesome thing about living in the Pacific Northwest is that we get to go to events and meet some of these great creators. And Beth Sobel happened to be someone that I knew from online, and I had met her via Twitter. You know, we had chatted, and she was at OrcaCon the first year. So this is not the most recent OrcaCon that we were all at just a couple weeks ago. This was the first OrcaCon. She showed up, and you know, I made it a point to find her and tell her how big of a fan I was. And we played some games with her and told her the story of The Last Garden. And she was very, very intrigued. And it was like, okay, that's, you know, we'll see you later. And I was like telling Matt, I was like, man, someday I want to work with her. She's really talented. And then we're kind of like, well, why don't we just ask her if she wants to do The Last Garden? And she was into it. And the thing I think that was great was, so Beth had stated somewhere she had done like a Q&A, and she said that she wasn't really that into doing like hard science fiction stuff. And so that was something that we were kind of a little bit nervous about approaching her with, something that was like kind of sci-fi, but she totally got it. And she was like, no, your art is more about the textures and this like reclaimed materials and that kind of stuff. And she was totally on board with that. And she nailed it. Like she was the one who came up with the idea for the box cover, which I think turned out really, really well. We sort of had like our idea. We're like, hey, we think it should be this. And she's like, okay. And she sent us a sketch, and she's like, well, here's what you guys wanted. And then here's what I came up with. And it was like, oh, okay. Well, we'll go with that.
I know you guys wanted this other thing, but no. Just don't.
Yeah. It was really awesome to work with her in that capacity, because she was the first artist that we've ever worked with, you know. So we were very open to the process, and as I could not have asked for a better person to work with on a first project, because she was very patient. And I was like, hey, just so you know, I don't know how to work with an artist, so I'm going to need your help. And she was totally willing to be patient with us and to give us feedback and all of that stuff. And she really made it possible for us to get the project off the ground. And then I do want to mention our graphic designer, Justin Treadway, who works with me and Marguerite at Card Kingdom. So Beth's art is very organic and beautiful, and it's kind of has all this texture to it, and it's really awesome. And what Justin brought is sort of that Fallout post-apocalyptic vibe to it, that recycled material vibe, and some of the overlays and stuff. And it's kind of like, you know, it's like chocolate and peanut butter, in my opinion, where it's something that, like, until you have that combination together, it's like, okay, these are like two sort of distinct flavors, but then when you combine it, I think it works really well, and it tells the story so well. And again, that's a testament to Beth and Justin more than it is a testament to Matt and my art direction.
Well, and your art direction, one thing I will call out, and I don't know, because there's one character in the game, that character could have been anything. It could have been any one thing, and you guys picked a woman of color who is also a little bit older, and I thought that was a really smart choice, and it's a beautiful, beautiful sketch of the woman, and it's something to think about when you're doing art direction, not to just have that kind of generic looking queen. she looks like a real person, which is Beth's specialty is making humans look like humans, not just like sketches of humans. And so it's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, that was sort of the main reason why we were so excited to get Beth, is because, you know, the players are these robotanists, but the character and the heart of the story is really in this queen character. And we knew that, like, if you have, you know, one chance to put a person in your game and you want people to feel empathy and pathos for that person, like, get Beth Sobel to do the art, because she has a way of capturing that vibrancy, you know. And our direction was like, yeah, you know, we want a woman of color who's elderly, but she's vibrant and she has energy, and, you know, it's not like this isn't a sad story. This is her trying to make the most out of a very dire situation. And it's really like, this is, you know, her final gift to the world is this garden. And you know, Beth took it from there. And I love the fact that she, you know, dressed the queen in, you know, sort of more plain type of clothes. Like, it's not this, like, you know, like queen regalia.
Well, who's she dressing up for these days, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. And the big part about it is that the whole story, and like I said, with 1000 XP, you know, our goal is to inspire imagination and to encourage creativity. And one element of that inspire imagination that we are really, really passionate about with The Last Garden is that we want to tell a part of a story, and we want you to fill in the gaps. You know, like, we want people to wonder, well, who was the queen before this all happened? And as part of that, on the cover of the box, you actually have an old picture. It's kind of like, I can't pronounce it. It's like the French term. It's like trompe l'oeil or lo. I don't know. It's horrible.
Now I know what you're talking about. Okay.
Right. It's so to the people who are listening, the box looks like an actual box, and it has some rope on it, and it has some items that are like tied to the top of the box. Two of the items
similar to the penny press.
Yes, it's that same style. And two of the items that are on there are two pictures. One is an older picture that is sort of weathered and has been folded, and that's the queen in the garden when she was younger, and there's actual plants and flora and fauna in the garden. And then the other picture next to it is the queen now working in the garden with one of the robotanists trying to rebuild these artificial things. And so you see that juxtaposition of, you know, her when she was younger and her when she was older. And like I said, we hope that people will wonder about the world that we're creating and fill in the gaps themselves. That's our goal, at least.
Oh, that's just beautiful. I really do. I quite love that. And I was wondering if is there fauna left in the world?
So in the storyline, in canon, there is not. However, our mutual friend Aaron Dono pitched to us a game that was the sequel, and he's like, it should be like The Land Before Time, where the robotanists leave, and because they hear about this place where there's still plants, and so the robotanists have to journey there, and the whole game is about the journey of the robotanists. I cannot confirm nor deny whether or not we're ever going to make that game, and I don't want to fill in the canon for other people, so I'll let other people decide.
But is there going to be a Petrie character then? Because that's all I need.
Yes.
We'll just actually turn it into an animated series, I think.
We'll just all go watch The Land Before Time. It'll be fun.
Right. How many sequels does that have now?
That's funny. I was just thinking that same thought, Chris. It's like, well, I think there's like 7 or 8 of them now because.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, because I was just having to be flipping through Netflix looking for cartoons to watch, and I'm like, really, it was like up to at least like 6 or 7. I'm like, really? There's like 7 of these? So it's up there way more than what I was expecting.
I've only seen the first one.
They have so many sequels that now it's just The Land Time. Because like before, 1 through 7 was before, but 8 through 9. Yeah.
The Land After Time was just Jurassic Park. That's cool.
Right.
There you go. They're up to present day.
That would be The Land Per Time, right?
Ooh.
Yeah. The Land Per Time. Uh-oh.
Anyway, sorry.
My goodness.
We're too far down that rabbit trail. Let's pull it back.
I was trying to pull us back, and then Jason just kept going.
You know.
It's all those cartoons you watching.
I was busy watching Voltron before this.
Oh, really?
I heard that's amazing, by the way. I've heard Voltron is really good.
I really enjoyed their reimagining of season 1, and I just started season 2. Just watched the first episode.
So this is a Transformers cartoon?
Voltron, are you? Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! Oh,
Chris, you work with her.
I know, but we work on opposite corners of the building, though.
Okay.
It's so true.
All right, I'll give you that then.
They even hired in like one of these women I've known for a really long time. She's like, I never see you, and we're just in opposite ends of the same building.
Like literal opposite ends of the same building. It's pretty funny.
It's just a giant building.
Yeah.
So
But-
Voltron is 5 lions piloted by 5 individuals, and then they all come together.
Okay, now I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, so they all like zoom together and they make the like big thing, kind of like the Power Rangers did.
Yeah.
Kind of, yes.
Okay.
Except for Voltron was before Power Rangers.
So what? The Power Rangers have a new movie coming out, and I saw the trailers.
The trailers actually look pretty good. I hate to admit that.
Yeah, but there's no like, I don't know. So the thing about the Power Rangers is they were really popular when I was babysitting. So I've seen a lot of the original. So I've seen like, when Tommy went from one color to another and everything, like I saw all those things, but I haven't seen anything since then. And I imagine it's gone a little off the rails since then.
I heard somewhere that the most recent Power Rangers trailer revealed that the villain, Rita or whatever, is actually, she was like a Green Ranger like 10,000 years ago, and like she's like a Green Ranger that turned evil or something like that. I don't know.
I could buy that.
I don't know enough about the Power Rangers lore. Like I know like watching the series, but I didn't know that it got like that deep into like the mythology of Power Rangers.
Chris. So you're going to make The Last Garden, right? And you're coming up and trying to think of how to do the Kickstarter and how to make this game a reality once you decided not to go with the publisher. And then Under My Bed happened. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened?
Yeah, so let me try to repiece this timeline because they kind of happen concurrently a little bit. Like I said, at the time we had pitched The Last Garden to a publisher. That publisher was very interested in it and then ended up wanting to sign it. And we were actually working with them. We hadn't signed any contracts or anything like that, but we were just kind of emailing back and forth and working with them in doing some development on the game and kind of trying to solve some issues that the original versions had. So during that time, we were still taking the public play tests and doing those kind of things. And there was an episode of the Building the Game podcast where they talked about they had this card game that if you see them at a convention and ask them about it, they will give you like these free packs of this card game that they invented. And I was like, that's such a cool like business card, right? And so I decided I was going to design a micro game to do that same thing with. It was going to be like, under 10 cards, and it was just going to be a little thing that I could give to my friends as sort of, and to people that I met as like this like business card. And I started making that, and I was like, okay, well, this game was basically it's a micro game version of Spyfall. I really, really enjoy Spyfall. It's actually, I think I don't get to play it as often as I like because I just love bluffing and deduction games, and I think Spyfall is a great version of that because I love how both the spy and everyone else has to be sneaky with the way that they're playing the game. I much prefer that over games where it's like, like the Resistance or something like that, where the Resistance doesn't really have a reason to lie. Like they're just trying to be honest the whole time. So I like where both sides have sort of secrets. And I thought it was really smart. So I wanted to design a micro game version of that was one deck of, under 10 cards that you could play. And I kind of went around with a few different themes, and I sort of was piecing it together. And then somewhere in that process, this idea of jumped into my head where, what if the person who was trying to hide was actually a kid? And the kid was trying to figure out what monster was hiding underneath their bed. And to do that, they put on a monster costume and go out into the woods and talk to all these other monsters. And of course, the monsters are like, you know, they know that one of them is a kid because they can smell the kid, but they don't know who it is. And so they're trying to figure out who the kid is or something like that. So I just love the idea of again, it's one of those ideas, it's kind of like The Last Garden, where it's like, where's this kid's parents? Why is this kid like, you know, living in a house by themselves? Why is this kid not afraid of monsters when they're wearing a monster costume? All these sort of questions pop up. And so I was like, you know, I want to make this. I thought it was a cute idea. And so I was like, well, this needs art, because my version of Spyfall is pretty much entirely art based. It's like a mixture of Guess Who and Spyfall. And so I started looking around for artists on DeviantArt and all these things. And I kind of, I think I Googled, you know, cute monster or something, or adorable monster or something like that. And I came across an Instagram page for a woman named Beth Hawley, who was actually at the time was a design student in the UK. And so I hit her up and I was like, hey, I'd really like for you to do some monsters for me. You have some really cool art. And she was in school at the time. She had never done a commission before. And I was like, well, you know, I'll pay you, you know, and so I worked with her and paid her for some art. And the cool thing about it is it's all hand painted. It's all watercolors that she then scanned and sort of layered on top of one another. So it actually is this really adorable, beautiful artwork. And I used that and I made some cards and I took it to Unpub with me 2 years ago, or I guess a year ago. And, you know, I was giving it out to people for free. It was kind of like this, like, you know, this item that I was just giving it, and people really were into it. And so that's when I got the idea of, oh, well, you know, maybe I can actually make this a product. And so I commissioned some more artwork from her. And I was like, this would be a good way for me to practice for a Kickstarter. Somewhere in that time frame, Matt and I had decided that we were going to then, where we were going to try to self-publish the Last Garden. And so I was like, well, I don't want that to be my first ever campaign. So this will give me an opportunity to, you know, make a game and see how the back end works. Like, for some reason, I don't know why, but I had this really tangible fear of launching a Kickstarter and then logging on and like the back end being like completely confusing or strange or something that I didn't anticipate.
It feels like it's going to turn into one of those like sci-fi control panels where there's a million buttons to push and you don't know what's going to happen.
Yes, exactly. And I was like, I just had this huge fear of it. It turns out that the back end of Kickstarter is actually laughably not very high tech.
Almost where it doesn't have enough features. That's why Kickstarter exists. Yes.
Exactly. So I put it up on Kickstarter and I built the page and everything, and that was a good practice. And I didn't launch it, and I was actually I didn't launch it for months actually. And then one day I was driving to work and I was just like, I'm just gonna launch it. Like, I don't know, let's see what happens. Like, why not? And so I got to work a little bit early that day, and I was like, okay, like, launch Kickstarter, post about it on Twitter, post about it on Facebook, start working, clock in for work. and then my phone kept getting updates, and then it turns out that, the 50 friends that I thought were going to back it ended up backing it, but then they ended up sharing it with everyone else, and the next thing you know, it went really, really big. And the interesting thing about it was that it was a pay what you want campaign. So I charged $3 for shipping in the US and $6 for shipping overseas. But you could pay any amount you wanted over that, right? So like, some people could pay $1, some people could pay $20, whatever you wanted. And so it was really low barrier to entry, and it kind of just caught on. And because of that, like, there wasn't really a lull. Like, there was a small lull, but then there was a huge bump in the middle when our friend Suze mentioned it on the Board Game Breakfast, it was the Breakfast or Blender?
Breakfast is what she does the Kickstarter for.
Yeah, so there was a Board Game Breakfast, and so she mentioned it, and it got a pretty big bump in the middle, and then kind of just kept going. And so at the end of it, I ended up with a little over 1,200 backers.
Which is bananas.
Which was wild. I did not expect that. It was shocking. I think after the first couple of days, I told Matt, me and Matt had a meeting that day, and I was like, okay, we kind of took our wagers, and I was like, I think we'll get up to 300 backers.
Right.
And he's like, I think we'll get to like 400. I was like, okay, we'll see. And it blew up huge. And it was cool. And it was awesome. And the game went out. because I was using a print-on-demand service to make the cards, it was able to be like basically shipped out, 3 or 4 weeks after the Kickstarter was over. So it went out pretty quick. And yeah, it was a fun project, and it was cool to just know that, the game was going out and people were playing it. And it was really awesome to see people sharing their pictures of them playing it with their kids and that kind of stuff, because I think that it is a good game. It's, if you're a hardcore gamer or whatever, it's not going to give you the depth that you might want. I designed it as something that you could hold in your back pocket and play when you're in line at PAX with strangers, so that's kind of what my intent was. But because of that, it's also simple enough for kids to play. And so, I see a lot of pictures of families sharing it with their kids, and that's really cool. And so, yeah, it was a good practice run. And it kind of got me pumped to do The Last Garden, and it gave me that practice.
Were there any big hiccups or anything?
Big hiccups, yes. There was a huge hiccup. When this is actually a great lesson. Thanks for leading this question. This is a great. No, this is a great lesson. This is a great reason to do a smaller Kickstarter first. So I did all the graphic design and put together all the files for the game. And at the last minute during the Kickstarter campaign, some people were like, "Oh, it'd be really cool to get some reference cards in there." And I was like, "Oh, well, we're high enough level that I can order a large enough quantity to get a discount. So yeah, I have room for 4 more cards or whatever." And so I put in these reference cards. So I had to update the files last minute, send them off to the printer, send me 2,000, thank you, and that was kind of the end of it. When I got the cards, they all looked great. I was actually I opened one up. I was going to take a picture for social media and share it. And I was like, oh, I should probably put the kid card, the most important card in the deck, on top. And it wasn't there. And I was like, oh, okay, that's weird. So I looked at another one, and the kid wasn't there either. And I went back and looked at the file. I was like, okay, 18 cards. And I look and I count 18 cards. And I realized that when I was changing the file, I actually omitted the most important card in the game. Literally the only card that the game cannot function without was not there.
That's amazing.
And so I had to scramble at the last minute to order 2,000 kid cards separate. And I ordered that, and they got there. And even with all that, the turnaround was still pretty crazy. And I was able to actually beat my goal in delivery. So, but that's a great lesson to learn, though, because, if this was a game that we were producing in China or something like that, I wouldn't be able to get the replacement parts in 2 weeks.
No, you would not.
So that was a really, really big eye-opening experience that I'm completely thankful for being able to have that experience. So
yeah, you always have to do that one last at least send it to a friend and say, hey, this is this game about blah blah blah, and they'd be like, what do you mean a kid card? What are you talking about?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, so we instituted a rule at 1000 XP. We don't have very many, but the rule is that we can't submit files for print until at least me and Matt both look at them. So at least us two. But I imagine that we're going to have a lot of proofreaders when we do Last Garden, because that was, I was able to laugh about it because it was just,
because it was fixable hilarious at the time.
Right.
That's
if it was not fixable, it'd be a big deal. I heard a story from when on the, was it Board Games Insider, I think, with Ignacy and Steven. Yeah. On their podcast, they were talking about there was an issue with the with one of Portal Games rule books, and they actually had to get all the rules printed, all the boxes opened up at the factory, the new rules put in, and then have it reshrinked. And, it cost them a lot of money, obviously. And Ignacy was like, at least we actually caught it before it left, the factory, because it could have been even worse, So these mistakes do happen, and you have to kind of be able to jump into crisis mode. And luckily, my crisis was minimal compared to what it could have been.
Well, and TC Petty, I think a couple games ago, I want to say it was Xenon Profiteer, they printed the wrong player counts on the side of the box. So on BGG, he literally built a 5-player variant for his game because it said 2 to 5 on the side of the box.
That's awesome. That is such an awesome reaction.
Also, you had Dice Hate Me with the New Bedford. All the the expansion tiles were wrong. They had to do a whole reprint of those and ship, and and that's been several months. Yeah. Before we got those. So yeah, it definitely happens.
Deluvia Project
Yeah.
has a misprint on the score track. They don't go in order. There are like 244s on there. And just like, it's those types of things that just make you really want to find your anal retentive friends that will tell you when something is not right.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. It's, you know, it's tough. And I think that like it's a little bit more pronounced now because there are so many games getting put out.
Precisely.
A lot of these teams, like, you know, Dice Hate Me is not like a huge outfit.
No.
You know, it's not like a bunch of people.
It's Chris Kirkman. I mean, like, to be honest.
Right.
It's now
exactly.
greater than games now, but it's still just Chris.
At the time. Yeah. So I think it's just important, you know, it's important to you know, remember the fact that like, hey, you know, say what you want about the board game industry, you know, 15 years ago or whatever, but like there's a reason why these big companies exist and have done what they've done. And you know, all this stuff is some sort of, now you have all these people like me who are starting their own publishing companies who need to learn all those lessons, and sometimes you got to learn the hard way. I think a lot of it though comes a lot of the best way to fix that though is to have a good relationship with your community going in, because I think for the most part, like most of the backers Under My Bed were like very, very nice about the whole thing. You know, they're like, it went really well. And I think it's because I tried to really let them know at every stage of what I was doing, what was going on and what was going wrong. And like the second that I learned that it was going to be delayed 2 weeks, even though we were still on pace to deliver early, I let them know, and I was like, hey, just so you guys know, there's this hilarious story. I forgot the kid. My bad.
It's like the best story.
One thing I do want to mention, though, before we move on from Under My Bed, because this just happened today, is I have a thing going on right now, 1000 XP. If you donate at least $10 to the ACLU, and you send confirmation to either my Twitter at NPCChris, or you can send it to chris@1000xp.com. We will send you a free copy of Under My Bed. So
nice.
If you do that, let us know, and we'll get you a free copy.
Do you have a specific webpage to go to?
So if you go to 1000xp.com, you can contact us from there. It basically, like, just send us like a screenshot of your donation to the ACLU and your address, and we'll shoot you a copy of the game. Or if you hit me up on Twitter at NPCChris, I'm there too. So we just announced it today via Twitter and Facebook. So
awesome.
Yeah.
I will make sure to throw that in the show notes for you too.
Please do.
That's a really important thing because we all really want to care about what's going on right now, and the ACLU is doing some really important work, and I feel like the more that we can encourage people to donate to them, the better. And so a lot of people are doing some cool deals about donating and, you know, getting product and stuff out.
I was inspired by Grant Rodiak, who was doing that, and then Isaac Shalev also is doing the same thing.
Yep.
The only game I have out is Under My Bed, and so like donating, and it's a micro game, and it's cheap, and so like donating a portion of those profits is like nothing. So I'd rather just have you donate directly to the ACLU, and I will send you a free copy. Like that's much better, I think, for everyone.
Right. And Grant is doing that for Farmageddon and for Hocus, I believe.
Hocus.
And those are, I mean, already fantastic games. And what's Isaac doing it for?
Chronosphere?
Oh, okay,
yes,
cool.
The time game.
Yeah, that one-time game.
Well, it's funny. It's funny because you know, Isaac's whole thing with that is he's like, you know, we don't want to repeat history, so I'm going to donate. And my whole thing is, it's like, hey, you know, the Under My Bed is a story about a badass, brave kid going out and facing their fears,
Finding
and
the
so let's not live in
monsters.
fear.
Okay.
Let's be brave, and let's do this. You know, so that's kind of where I'm coming from.
That's amazing. I think that's really great, and I'm glad that you're willing to do that. It's laudable. I really appreciate it.
It's the least I could do.
Yeah. I was saying that before we started recording, I was just like, yeah, I'm generally okay right now, but everything is kind of the pits. So every little good piece of news is amazing right now, and it's all helping us get through the day. So, yeah, there's that. So, something that the audience may not know about you, but I do, Chris, is that you listen to a lot of podcasts and read a lot of books. What all did you do to prepare yourself for the Kickstarter?
So I have been, like I said, 4 years ago, we decided that we wanted to get involved in the gaming community in a more official capacity. We knew back then we wanted to design games, and we knew that the best way to get our foot in the door was to just create content for other people. Sort of just, I don't know, just help people out, add some value into the community, and then get to know people and network, and that's kind of what we did. And so these past 4 years, I've done nothing. I've known that I wanted to publish games and design games. I mentioned that we decided sort of last minute to self-publish Last Garden. We had other games that we were actually already working on in self-publishing. We just weren't going to do it with The Last Garden, but instead we kind of flipped around our schedule and said, okay, let's start with The Last Garden. So I was fortunate enough to work at a job at the time 4 years ago when I was starting, where I could listen to a lot of podcasts, and I consumed the Funding the Dream, which they don't make new episodes anymore, but it's basically it's called Funding the Dream on Kickstarter, I think is the full name of the podcast, but it's by Richard Bliss, and it was every episode. I think they were daily at the time. It was like 5 episodes a week. There was just real short episodes about Kickstarters. And they had a lot of Kickstarter creators on. Jamie Stegmaier was on there all the time. That got me interested in Jamie Stegmaier's blog. So I read his entire blog, and then I went out and bought his book, and I read his book twice. And James Matthew has a wonderful blog about, the publishing and Kickstarter stuff, and then just kind of getting in Facebook groups and just consuming as much as possible about, Kickstarter. And luckily the cool thing about Kickstarter is that it's even though there's tons of them coming out, it's very much like everyone is willing to help out one another. I think that we're still in the rising tide floats all boats philosophy in crowdfunding, and people know that like the more quality campaigns that are there, just the more people are going to come to the platforms in general. And so people are very, very friendly when it comes to giving advice to other creators. And so that sort of has been great for me, is because I am able to just consume all of this stuff. As you mentioned, I'm a pretty big podcast listener, and I listen to a lot of ebooks and stuff like that. And a lot of the ebooks I listen to are like, social media marketing and branding. So they don't always specifically apply, but there's obviously a lot of crossover in how to promote a Kickstarter and how to get people going. And that's the biggest thing. That's what they used to say on the Funding the Dream podcast is crowdfunding, the first part's the crowd, and you got to build that crowd up first. And that's kind of like your number one goal is to, get to know people and get yourself out there, and kind of everything else will fall into place eventually. But it is a lot of work, and it's something that, I think I actually was talking to you, Marguerite, but it's something that me and Matt were talking about, because we started 1000 XP, and we're both creatives. We're both into the creation and design of the products and the creation of the content, and we're not the most the most organized, project focused individuals. We can do that. It's not that it's like, I wouldn't say that it's an incredibly difficult job. You can research it and figure out how to run a Kickstarter. But for us, the big thing is it's not something that we would naturally gravitate towards.
It's not fueling you, right? Like not.
And that's the big thing, is it wasn't something that like, it didn't get me out of bed in the morning to like make a spreadsheet to try to figure out, what my MSRP should be, like that's not what was kind of the reason I was doing it. But we know that there are people out there that are that way. And so, we talked about it. And we're like, okay, well, we're putting this Kickstarter together. We found someone that we're going to actually team up with who is really into the logistics and the managing of the project and all that stuff. And so we're going to work with them on a sort of a one-time contract basis with Last Garden. So this week, it's kind of getting her up to speed on the board game industry. And she's also a really avid researcher. She's kind of like me. So she's like super excited to dig into all these resources that I'm giving her so she can get up to speed on, the board games industry. And we're having some meetings this week. But so she's coming on board to help us out with that. And it's the type of thing where, in the future, depending on the success of Last Garden, maybe we'll self-publish again soon. Or maybe it'll be a long time before we self-publish again. So we're going to kind of wait and see how that goes. But like I said, the great thing about Kickstarter is if you're interested in trying one out, you can go out there and find a ton of resources that will tell you all about it. Another mention, Ed Baraf.
Oh, okay. So Pencil, is it Pencil First? Yeah.
Yep.
Pencil First, yeah. He has a bunch of videos on YouTube where he talks about Kickstarter as well. And so that's another resource for people. But there's a ton of resources out there. If you just start asking questions, people will be more than happy to help.
There's one that you didn't mention that I don't know that you utilized, but Cardboard Edison does some really interesting research and some really cool stats, because I'm kind of a stat nerd. Like, their statistics are super right on, and I really love reading most of what they've done.
Yeah, so Cardboard Edison is fantastic. I back them on Patreon. I encourage other people to do the same thing.
Me too.
They are a wonderful resource for anyone who's interested in design of board games, and a lot of that does cross over to Kickstarters as well. But even if you're trying to get published, they're a fantastic resource. They do a lot of content curation, where you can follow them on Twitter, and every day they'll share links to the people that are making board game design content. And so they're really awesome. They also, design games themselves and have published games as well. So they've seen all aspects of the business. And so, yes, they're a phenomenal resource. I don't think they jumped out because, to me, I don't consider them like a Kickstarter centric resource, but they definitely have plenty of stuff out there.
The one in particular, because so in my day job, like not content, not board games, just like my day job as a buyer, the one thing that the most fail that I come across when people are trying to sell me games is MSRP. And Cardboard Edison has one of my favorite articles about MSRP and how it works in board games. And so I link that article quite a lot to people, where they just don't even, they will ask me, a retail buyer, what I should charge for their games. Which is so laughable to me, but these people are so new and they don't do their research. And so finding someone like Chris who is willing to go and do the research and kind of do the work before they get the Kickstarter, before they're sitting on 2,000 copies of the games in their garage, it's inspiring to me, because it's so frustrating for me to have like a new creator with their brand new game that's full of all of these giant flaws, and it's so late at that point. Once it's printed on cardboard, there's nothing I can do to help. So I'm super about, as soon as you can catch someone before the things are printed, I'm all about that.
Randy Hoyt also has a great article about the MSRP and what you should be charging too, just FYI.
I shared the link to Randy's article today, actually, on the BGG forums to someone. But I think that it's also worth pointing out that I'm coming at this at a time where I'm able to see these potential pitfalls because other people have gone through them. And so that's something that I can have the benefit of. I also, I'm good friends with the folks over at Daily Magic Games who have done a bunch of Kickstarters for their own publishing company. But David did Alien Frontiers the first time, which at the time was a very big Kickstarter. I think when Alien Frontiers was first Kickstarter, I think it was the biggest board game Kickstarter.
Should be noted that David also has a Kickstarter going right now for Yukon Salon. Just saying.
Oh no, that's Dave.
Oh, I thought you were talking Dave. Sorry. Which Dave are you talking?
This is Dave McKenzie.
Oh yeah. Okay, so Tori's game. Yeah.
Daily Magic Games.
From Daily Magic, but Dave Fuden also is a friend of mine. So, and he's done a Kickstarter as well. So these are all people. so these are all people that I was able to reach out to and have honest conversations with and say, hey, if you were doing your first one now, what would you do? It was great. With Dave McKenzie, is I was talking to him. I was like, I'm thinking about doing my Kickstarter this way. What do you think? And he's like, well, I've done it that way and I've done it this way, and here's what happened. And so because he's had enough, that he's been able to have these sort of trial and error projects, and I'm able to glean off that. But I think such a big part of what I would say to someone who's interested in self-publishing and going the Kickstarter route is, first of all, I would say that as long as you do the research and you're diligent and you cover all your bases, there's definitely no harm in trying it out. But it takes a large dose of self-awareness to know what will be the best path for you. And like I said, even with me and Matt, we knew that it was going to be a ton of work going into it. we're about to launch our Kickstarter, and we're thrilled and super excited about it, and we think it's going to go great, and we're super pumped. But looking at it, and we're saying, hey, is that what we want to spend all of our time on? Like, is with the next one, do we really want to spend years putting a project together, or is there a way to go about being involved in this industry and being publishers and focusing on our strengths? And so that's kind of what we're going to explore, and that's what's exciting. So
yeah, I would agree, but I think you're not giving yourself enough credit, because I'm not talking about people 3 years ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago. I'm talking 2 weeks ago, someone emailed me sitting on 2,000 copies of their own game. That was horrible. I mean, people with plenty of resources at hand don't utilize them the way that I feel like you do. So I'm telling you right now, like, you are 1 in 100.
Well, I appreciate that. And I'll take the compliment and say thank you.
Take the compliment.
But again, I will say that, like, I have been around the industry for a while. Like our very first episode of NBC Cast, episode 0, was never actually released. That episode was about Kickstarter. So I've been following, and my opinion of Kickstarter back then was very different than it is now. Very different. Scandalously different than it is now. So that episode will never be released.
Until you're behind the music comes out.
Yeah, yes. Someone will find it until I run for office, and then it'll be leaked. But so I'll take the credit and I'll say thank you. But I will say that I've been around the industry for 4 years now, and I've been following Kickstarter for a long time. And so, like, a lot of this stuff, like I said, is just me gleaning the knowledge. And you have to be willing. Like, anytime you do something, and at least in my opinion, if you're gonna jump into board game publishing or decide that you want to get into board game publishing, like, you have to do the work, and you have to really go out of your way to reach out to people who have done that same thing and talk to them and learn what it's really like, because it's not what most people think it is. It's really not. And until you actually get to sit down and interact with people who have done board game publishing, you're not going to really know what it's like. So I encourage people to do that. And even if you think you've done enough research, do more research, meet more people.
You can't do enough, because it no matter how much, you'll still end up falling, hopefully, into one of the shorter or smaller pitfalls. But we've, even as much research as Wash and I did, we still made a couple of small errors that went, oh yeah, that's why they say that. Shit, I forgot about that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Jason. And the other thing about it too is that it's a new platform, Kickstarter, and it's always changing. It's constantly evolving. So you might look at something, read an article that's like a year or year and a half old, and it will give you completely different information than something you read last week, because buyers have changed. The backers, the psychology of backing has changed. Like, all those things are things that we're learning now. And so, you want to make sure that you're continually sort of honing your skills and getting ready. Just last week, I was like, hey, what is the general consensus these days about Kickstarter exclusive? Like, what are the best practices for it? And, I got a bunch of answers, and talked to a bunch of people who gave me advice, and a lot of that advice fit kind of with my intuition. But if I was to look at older articles about Kickstarter exclusives, I'm sure I would have gotten very different answers than what I got 2 weeks ago. So,
because now it's okay to call it a Kickstarter exclusive, but still offer it at cons and BGG website.
Right. And I think that,
2 years ago, if it was an exclusive, it was purely a Kickstarter exclusive, and that would be the only way to get it. So even like you said, the word exclusive now actually means a little bit different.
Yeah. I would caution people about using exclusive. I would say that, like, I personally, because of exactly what you're inferring, like, I wouldn't use that word. But just, it's sort of like the concept, right? Like, people are like, Kickstarter backers, they want something special, and like a year or 2 years ago, it might have been like, they want something that you can't get anywhere else. But now it's like they want something, but you can still have that thing somewhere else. But here's how you go about it. Like don't give it to Kickstarter backers first, or give it to Kickstarter backers for free and then put it on the BGG store and sell it to other people. Like there's ways to incentivize people to back your Kickstarter without sort of harming, literally excluding other people. Early birds have been something that like is a hot topic amongst Kickstarter creators, and the general consensus these days is that people don't like them. A lot of people, it turns a lot of backers off because you'll give a discount to the the first 100 people that show up, but the trick is that those 100 people were probably going to show up anyway. Like these are like your 100 friends, you're like the 100 people that follow your company or like you the most. Those people are going to back, and you're giving them a discount, and then anyone who's like 101 and on is going to look at that and say, well, those people got it for cheaper. Like, why? Like, that's not fair.
Yeah.
And it's just this whole ordeal.
It is. Yeah, and I get what you're trying to do with that, trying to get that first initial momentum, but if you haven't done the work, like you said before, reaching out to the community and building some kind of fan base, then before you even launch your Kickstarter, then you're already kind of hurting yourself. So,
yep.
And
you got to build that crowd.
Yeah, and as Stagmeyer has said, you're actually making the value of your own product look like it's worth less by early birds.
Yeah. I read an article, and Marguerite can probably speak to this, but I read an article today, and it was from the perspective of a game store who it's like here's what I'm looking for when I go to back a Kickstarter, and it's like, first of all, what's the MSRP of the game? If you're giving it to people on Kickstarter for like $30 or whatever, and the MSRP is really $45, how am I going to sell it to someone in my store when they come in and they think that the perceived value of that game is $30? Like they're going to say, well, it was $30 on Kickstarter. Like, why are you charging me $45? And it's you have to be very careful about that. And I think that a lot of that is people are realizing that there are projects that go up on Kickstarter that do well there that end up ultimately at the end of the day still being financial failures because all they have is their Kickstarter, and then like Marguerite said, they're sitting with 2,000 copies of their game in their garage.
Right. Yeah. Well, and the other side of that is you can if you're not using Ship Naked or somebody like that to mail to your Kickstarter, you can actually get away with going a little bit less. I mean, that's the back end of the business, but that a lot of people don't realize, but because you're leaving out the middleman, so you can kind of get away with that little cut.
There's a lot of different factors, and there's no right way to do all this stuff too. You also have to gauge kind of what your project is and what your community is and all those types of things too.
I think there's a lot of factors of whether or not you use fulfillment, and whether fulfillment is something that you are capable of doing is a whole nother topic, because not everyone is good at that. Yes. Especially something like, take a Cool Mini or Not project where you have the base game and you have about 20 different expansions that people did as add-ons or whatever. Like, not everyone is going to do that and do it well and do it efficiently. So fulfillment is a whole nother thing. But one thing I will say, as a retail store that Chris and I represent at the moment, because we work at the same one, we don't represent the most common type of retail establishment. Like, our store doesn't have the same problems with Kickstarter as a lot of stores have expressed to me in like trade shows and things like that. So we have a whole different set of problems with Kickstarter, because every retail store, again, is a little bit different, just like every customer is different. And so retail and Kickstarter, that relationship there is very complicated. And in my personal opinion, me, Marguerite, not necessarily our store, I don't think Kickstarter is adverse to our back end. I don't think it affects our sales at all, but a lot of stores do. So you guys kind of touched on that. I'm like, oh, but a lot of stores will not agree with you at all. Stores hate Kickstarter.
Yeah. Well, I think so. I don't deal with the retail store at all. So I will preface this by saying that I don't actually do what Marguerite does. And so this is not the perspective of a retail store either. This is the perspective of me being someone who's about to publish my first major game, and sort of like, looking at my strategy for how I'm going to distribute my game, both, how I'm going to get the Kickstarter going, and then what I'm going to do with the games after. And the fact of the matter is, at least from my perspective and in the research I've done, is that because of there being so many games that are coming out these days, it's actually quite difficult now to get into distribution, because distributors can't carry everything. And by the same token, stores can't carry everything. You know, I work at Card Kingdom. We're a very large retail store, but a lot of stores are much smaller. But even Card Kingdom we don't carry near
everything. No, not even.
Right. So that is a very real thing. So when I'm looking at 1000 XP and what we're going to be doing with Last Garden, I am going to try to focus my efforts to making the Kickstarter as successful as I can. I'm going to be transitioning then to direct sales, and I'm going to be focusing on trying to sell direct to stores in the most fair and equitable way that I possibly can, including providing stores with opportunities to get the Kickstarter promo. And I'm doing that because, like I think I mentioned, I grew up in game stores. Like, I absolutely love game stores. I love what they represent. I love what they do for the hobby. I love that they're sort of these bastions for folks who don't always have somewhere else to go and feel like they're part of a community. I love that. And I want to support that in every way possible. But I also know that, like, this is our first big game, and it's not going to be easy for us to get into distribution. And yeah, we might get lucky and be able to pull it off, but I can't bank on doing that. So I imagine that with The Last Garden, my print run will be very close to what the backers require, and then I'll kind of go from there and try to figure out how to do the rest of it, unless the Kickstarter does something that surprises me, which,
like, if it jumps off, you increase those numbers. But I
right, obviously, like, if there's a lot of possibilities there, obviously, right?
But then look at the networks; it's still not in stores. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. So that's kind of what I'm looking at, right? Is if the Kickstarter does really, really well, then obviously that's going to change my strategy. And I say obviously because that's just the first word that came to my mind. But it's not. I understand that it's not always obvious.
About your word choice, real quick. Hold on.
But I think, Marguerite, I think you're right though. I think that there's a very tangible, fear. I think that Kickstarter creators have is Gil is very, very smart, and he has done his homework, and he knows what's up, right? And so you're looking at this game. It's like, yeah, it did well on Kickstarter, but damn, like, I don't want to be sitting on all these extra copies of this game. Like, and ultimately, until you put your game out there in front of people and the buzz starts going, you really don't know how well it's going to do. Right. And there's even large companies that get that wrong sometimes. Like, that's something that happens.
Z-Man Games, not to name any names.
Z-Man has a conservative policy, but the one I was thinking of when you say that is Zombicide. Because they printed almost to the number of copies they needed for backers, and then they were overwhelmed with orders from distributors and those types of things, and they didn't even know what to do with it.
Right. Yeah, and so who knows? Anything can happen. I would be pleasantly shocked if Last Garden did well enough that distributors were knocking my door down trying to get my game.
Yeah, no one should wait for that, by the way, because distributors are awesome, but they're completely overrun with new titles. But
absolutely,
yeah,
and that's my point. And thank you. You said it, like, you basically said it better than me. Is I am trying to anticipate for every possible permutation of how the Kickstarter goes, and so my immediate goal is, okay, fulfill the Kickstarter, make it successful, sell direct whatever you can that's left over, and then also contact as many retailers as you possibly can and try to sell direct to them and give them a solid reason to buy your product. And then if I can also somehow get distribution, then absolutely I will do that. It's not like I'm, like morally opposed to the distribution model or anything like that. It's just I'm trying to be pragmatic, and I know that this is my first game. Who knows if it does really well? We'll see how it goes, and then in the future games we might do differently. But our focus right now is to do right by the Kickstarter backers, to figure out a direct channel for people to buy directly from us. That's kind of what we're focusing on.
Yeah, and I think you've got a great idea about that, and having someone work on your logistics for you and kind of handle that end of it makes me so happy in my little buyer heart, because talking with someone who tries to do both, and if they only do one or the other well, it's very frustrating.
Yeah, it's a really important thing. Again, talking about starting a company in general, starting a publishing company, you really want to be self-aware and know what your strengths and your weaknesses are. Because, like I said, I can do the bookkeeping stuff. I consider myself reasonably intelligent, and if I don't know it, I can Google it. Like I can find out how to do that stuff. But it's not something that comes naturally to me, right? And so every hour or 2 hours that I'm spending doing that are hours that I could have been spending doing the things that I'm actually good at and that I actually enjoy doing.
Yeah. I was going to say, more importantly, enjoy doing.
Yeah. And it's a business, right? There's going to be things that I have to do that I don't want to do. Like there's laws that I have to abide by, so there's definitely going to be those things, but I have a choice of how I'm going to devote, my time. And I was talking, like I said, with Matt. Matt was kind of in the same boat as I was. Matt actually took on a lot of the bookkeeping, a lot of that stuff himself, and he stepped up and did it because he realized it needed to be done. But we're talking. It came out when we were talking about our follow up for Last Garden, and we're like, okay, Last Garden is starting to get codified, and we're starting to be good on it. What's going to be the follow up? And we were waiting for a few weeks, kind of having meetings about what we were going to follow it up with, and a lot of that was going to be contingent on how well it did. But then I was like, wait. Why are we just assuming that we want to publish another game? Like, why is that the core assumption? Like, what else could we be doing? And then we started looking at people like, Isaac and Matt Loomis, Isaac Shalev and Matt Loomis, who are just like, a design studio, and Sen and Jay, who do design, maybe, depending on how it goes, we might do the same thing with 1000 XP, focus more on the design element of it and the content creation, which is something that we're going to do regardless. But if we bring on someone like we have with Marissa, who's going to be helping us with our logistics and stuff, and if she does it and she does it well and she enjoys doing it, then maybe because of her, we'll go more in the publishing route, and we'll do more stuff because she's going to be the one who's focusing on figuring out which fulfillment centers around the world are going to get our game and how we're going to get them across the ocean and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. All right, well, we have about 15 more minutes, and I want to let both of you have a quick chance to speak a little on OrcaCon. That was a recent con up here in the Seattle area. It's in Everett, Washington, which is nearby, at least. I only made it to half a day, so I don't have super amounts of opinions about it, but I know that both of you attended. How did you feel about the second year of OrcaCon?
It was pretty much the same as last year. They opened it up a little bit more. They had moved some stuff around, which I felt it worked a lot better with where they did with the dealer's hall and stuff like that. And then I thought it was really neat that they brought the Best Western, which is like right around the corner or across the parking lot, whichever way you walked. But it was right there, right close. And they had a room opened up there as well it was almost became kind of the quiet room because it was off the beaten path. But that was nice too. So if you stay at the Best Western, there's a gaming room set aside right there too.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I actually really like OrcaCon, and it's still like it's a small convention, but it's growing, and it has a good heart and it has a good vibe to it, and that's kind of what I enjoy the most. Marguerite, you already know this. Jason, I don't know if you know this, but BGG Con is by far my favorite convention. Right. I love the community there. I love going there, and I just love a convention where I can just roll out of bed, go downstairs, and play games until I have to roll back into bed. Like, that's basically like my thing.
Yes.
And OrcaCon allows you to do that. I mean, the downside is it doesn't have like the huge library and stuff like that, but it's still kind of finding its feet. And I think that it's really cool to support local conventions, especially, you know, they just announced, you know, PAX Unplugged. And, you know, I think that you're seeing just more interest in the board gaming hobby, and these big conventions are getting bigger and bigger every year. It's nice to see these more regional focus conventions pop up, because to the people who can't go to your Gen Cons or your PAX Unplugs or your BGG Cons or your Origins, you know, they have these regional alternatives that they can still go and be part of the community, and I think that's really neat. I also think that I am a big fan of the inclusivity sort of bent that OrcaCon has, and the desire to sort of be a gaming convention for everybody, and I think that's really important. And I think that Donna, you know, is doing a fantastic job at sort of instilling that sort of spirit in the convention, and I really enjoy that. I wasn't necessarily a huge fan of, just logistically, I don't like having the you know, the two different hotels doing stuff. I understand why it was done. I just wish that there was a way to get more gaming space in that main hotel, because that, you know, that it became like it was late on, I think, Friday or Saturday night, where it was like we just couldn't find. We went to the Best Western because it was, you know, had room, right? So I think they're still trying to figure out how to best lay out that space in order to maximize it. But it'll get there, and it was a lot of fun.
I was going to say, I think 3 floors of the Holiday Inn were being worked on that originally wasn't planned on being worked on that weekend, so that's why they end up having to spread it out a little bit, from what I understand.
That makes sense. Yeah, they were working on that remodel.
Their original intent was to do like tournament type events in the off-site space. Like, this was the chatter during OrcaCon year 1. Was that they were going to rent out more space, but it was all going to be like events or scheduled type things. So me coming in, I was horribly sick for most of January, actually. I'm still kind of ill. I came in for half of a Sunday, and it was a little bit jarring to like try and meet up with people, because I didn't know one of the 3 spaces they would be in, and all 3 spaces were pretty separate. It was like a basement floor, a main floor, or like a separate hotel. But all of them were scheduled for open gaming. And I think the one thing that BGGCon does really well right now is that, for the most part, even though there's tons and tons of extra open gaming, when someone says that they're going to be in the open gaming area, they mean a very specific thing. They mean the big ballroom. And so it was a little bit weird for me to be like, I came along and we played our first game down in the basement, and people were looking for me and they couldn't quite find me, and I had to be like, well, I'm down, it's concrete. And then they kind of told me, oh, that's the garage, I'll be down there in a minute. And it was kind of like around a corner and by the pool. Like, it was just, that part of it's off-putting. But following Donna Pryor online as I do, apparently everything that went wrong, that could go wrong, had gone on. So like, people were sick and the hotel was remodeling without telling her, and everything bad had happened. So this was just like, you know, one of those horrible type of like piled on things. So I get that a bunch of stuff had happened, but it did feel a little disjointed as someone who only attended a little itty bitty bit.
Right. And yeah, I felt the same way. Like, it wasn't something that like it didn't, you know, ruin the convention for me by any means. But there is something that I like about you know, BGGCon, like, as you know, bringing it up, like, I like having everyone in that same area. Like, I like being able to like walk around and see like what my friends are playing and like that kind of stuff, you know. And so that was kind of missing from OrcaCon. But like I said, it's an awesome regional convention, and you know, in fairness, like, should I be comparing it to my favorite convention? Like, probably not, you know. So there you go.
Especially BGGCon has separate rooms, you know, and other floors also, whenever you want that kind of quiet time as a gamer. Because you're right, having that gaming hall, walking in there and kind of scanning over and seeing where everybody is and who's where is great. But also, at some point, the volume in there is kind of nice to get to a quiet room, and BGGCon does have all those other rooms that you can kind of hide in to play a game. where OrcaCon or Holiday Inn, at least this time, didn't have that room. So that's what I meant by it was nice to have that kind of offshoot room as well. Even though, yeah, it was in a different motel.
The din of the ballroom at BGGCon sometimes makes me feel like I'm sick. I know that's a really weird thing to say, but by the time I get to about Saturday, because I've been to BGG so many years now, I feel kind of ill, and then I leave that room and I'm like, oh no, I'm not ill. It's just like that weird ever-present din in the ballroom.
Yeah. No, and to OrcaCon's credit, like, it was, I don't remember if it was Friday or Saturday night. There was a night when it was really busy. It might have been Saturday night, I think.
Saturday night, I think that's when we played Flow History.
Right. So before I ended up going, so that we played that at the Best Western.
Right.
Before I went over there, though, to OrcaCon's credit, there was some rooms that they had set aside for some D&D events that were like right across the hall from the main room,
right.
the primary room that they opened up. And so I actually was playing games in there for a couple hours, like, and like I walked in and it was completely empty. And I was like, am I allowed to be in here? And then I went and asked OrcaCon, they're like, oh yeah, like we opened up for open gaming. So I was actually able to find like a table that was like quiet and like kind of private. And then, like I said, towards the tail end of that, we ended up going over to the Best Western anyway. So, I mean, they were cognizant of it and they were trying to, make changes on the fly. And the other sort of disparity we should mention between BGGCon and OrcaCon is this was OrcaCon's second year.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
BGGCon has been doing it for a while. So I'm looking forward to OrcaCon. I plan on going every year. Marguerite says that Everett is, in the Seattle area. I actually live closer to Everett than I live into Seattle. So it's pretty great for me.
It gives me an excuse to head north. So I'll be there every year.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty awesome, and so I'm excited to go. And I had a panel there, and it was really fun.
Well, and her panels, like, what I love about Donna is that she'll schedule panels with as much diversity and forward-thinkingness and mindfulness of, like, who she's inviting in and their belief systems and how they're going to speak, and, like, that stuff is all known by her. Like, she makes sure that people reflect the values of her con, and, say what you will, but that's really comforting to me to be able to, like, read a page about their mission statement and know that everyone that's speaking also represents that in a way. Maybe not 100% or anything, but at least in bullet point important parts.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I agree 100%.
Are making an effort to be.
Sure.
Yeah, I do think that, like, that's something that they've been sort of criticized before in the past about, which I think is just utterly ridiculous. Right. Because the key to OrcaCon, the reason it's awesome is because, like, it's an awesome inclusive gaming convention. It's not like you go there and all of it's like you're in the middle of a gay pride parade, like it's a gaming convention, but I think it has like it's almost like this. It sucks because it's like this catch-22 where it's like you want to let people know that, like, this is a place where everyone can come and have a good time together and everyone should feel welcome and safe and embraced by the gaming community. But then, like, even just calling that out makes it seem like it has like this like agenda attached to it, which I guess it sort of does, in that, like, the agenda is we want a place where everyone can come together and play games, but it's really, I don't know.
What she's willing to do is define everyone. She's willing to say everyone, and does not just mean this one type of person that you typically see. She wants like to call out to a bigger audience, and
which is important.
It is important. At least it is to
absolutely.
Me. But
no, absolutely. It's absolutely important to be specific, because, like, you could look at any convention and every convention is going to be like, oh no, this is open for everyone. Like, this is a comic book convention for everyone. But when you're specific, like, and giving people, the respect of identifying them specifically and saying, no, like, we want you to come here. Like, this is a convention for you.
It really puts its money where its mouth is. Like, they are calling out that they want women of color and people of different belief systems and things like that, and it's not a common thing. Everyone says that they are open to everyone, but it's very rare for people to say, I'm sorry, I have too many people signing up that aren't as representative as we want to be. Can we find some other folk? But
for panels and stuff.
I definitely have seen some backlash about that, but I found it to be pretty encouraging to me.
Yeah, it's an awesome convention. I enjoy it. Like, as far as like local conventions go, you know, I don't think there's any that I'd rather go to. Like, you know, and that's counting like the PAXs and stuff, and Emerald City Comic Cons. Like, OrcaCon is much more my speed. You know,
right?
I roll out of bed, I play games, I roll back into bed. Like, that's awesome. that's what I want. I want an excuse to play games all weekend and not have to look at a clock.
Yeah, because clocks are stressful. Yeah.
Yeah, they're annoying.
But speaking of clocks, I do want to give Chris an opportunity to drive home because he's very far from home right now. So it was really fun to have you on, though, Chris. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Chris.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun chatting. I hope people were excited to hear my musings about how much research I've done, and I hope people don't think I'm ungrateful for Marguerite's wonderful compliments and me trying to take them as best I can.
Chris is like the worst at taking compliments. It's amazing.
There's still work to be done.
I'm just gonna follow you around and compliment you someday. It'll be hilarious. That being said, Chris, would you please plug all of the things that you do, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Chris Rowlands. You can find me on Twitter at NPCChris. My podcast is called NPC Cast. That's where I got that Twitter handle from. You can go to npccast.com to listen to some of our role-playing game musings. You can go to 1000xp.com. And from there, you can follow our mailing list or do whatever you need to do to contact us through 1000xp. And our YouTube channel is youtube.com/1000xp, and that's we share our NPC Cast episodes there in video form, and we also have our board game design time episodes, which is basically where me and Matt totally tell you that you can absolutely make games and that you absolutely should make games, because that's really what drives us.
And I believe you have more people one painting tutorial that blew the heck up.
Yeah. so I have a YouTube channel. It's going pretty good. I'm putting some content out, but I've gotten checks twice now from Google, and the reason that Google sends me checks and I get that YouTube money is because I did a painting tutorial like 2 years ago as part of a failed vlog challenge. Like we were doing No Vlomo, and I was trying to do a vlog a day, and vlog number 4 of like the 6 that I ended up doing was this painting tutorial that ended up blowing up, and it has like, I don't know, almost like 140,000 views or something like that. If you go on YouTube and you search Minnie's painting tutorial or whatever, it's the first hit. So
I love that.
Thank you.
Much.
Thank you, based SEO for that. And there you go. So, and it sucks because it's like, I know a lot of our subscribers are probably people who are subscribing from that video, and like if I was really a savvy business person, I would be making more painting tutorials.
It sucks to be those subscribers. All right, Jason, where can we find you?
Find me at JA_Hancock, HANCOCK on Twitter. You can check out my podcast with Jason Washburn at Docking Bay 94 podcast. Find us on Facebook. Find Instagram and all that good stuff.
Instagram is what?
Probably J_Hancock. Okay. I'm on there so much.
I'm sure. I've seen you plenty of times there.
I'm trying to step up. I'm trying to step up my Instagram game. But
I'm trying to epically failing at
doing
Instagram
is so much fun right now. Are you kidding?
It's tough. It's not tough, but like I don't know.
Because you went to school for like cinematography and stuff. Like, get on it.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's good. Like my Instagram is pretty good. Like I got this whole like pattern going now with like my page.
Yeah.
Like I do like the every other like I'm working on my Instagram. I'm actively working on it.
All right.
It's just that
you probably just have pictures of my grandbaby on there right now.
Aww. So. Best excuse.
Adorable.
You know.
Okay, well, I am Maggibot, Maggibot. I can be found on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, BGG, and YouTube at maggibot.com, maggibot.com. I also head up meeplezincluded.com, which is a collaborative website with about 8 of us plus a couple hangers on like Jason. We've been doing some Twitch streaming at twitch.tv/meeples included. Every other Friday we try and do Games on the Rocks, which is 4 ladies talking about a bunch of games with drinks in hand. Anything...
No. 4 amazing ladies.
Thank you. They are some of my dearest friends in the world, and I can't tell you how much we enjoy making those. So it's hard to recognize how amazing they are from the outside, because it's really just a really good excuse to talk to some of my favorite humans. But I appreciate you both being here for the episode, and I will be one of the first backers. I can't guarantee the first backer of Last Garden, but I will be one of the first.
Oh my God, I almost forgot.
Ooh.
I have one more thing. I wanted to do a contest.
Ooh.
Can I do a contest?
Please?
Sure.
Okay, so if you go to 1000xp.com/contest, you can enter to win a free copy of The Last Garden. What you have to do is you have to go there and you have to scroll down and let me know where you heard about this contest, because I'm doing it on all the podcasts that I'm on. Each podcast is going to have their own unique winner. So someone who's listening to this podcast right now will win a free copy of The Last Garden. Ooh. You have to answer a question, and each question is unique. Marguerite, what should the question be for this podcast?
Name one of the blogs.
Okay, I got it. I got it.
You're interrupting my question with the preferred question?
Yes, because we did not bring this up, and it's been brought up in every episode.
Are you going to edit this
I forgot to ask
Because I don't think you are, but go ahead.
But you know what? Maybe not. We'll see.
Go ahead.
Star Trek or Star Wars?
Okay, so you have to answer Star Trek or Star Wars in 25 words or less. That's what, and then that'll know you're legit. There you go.
How about for you, Chris?
Oh, which one do I prefer of the two? Star Wars. But like, I'm not like a huge fan of either. But I just think like, I mean, I watched Next Generation when I was younger. I watched it with my mom and stuff, and I enjoyed it. But I never got like super into it. But if I was gonna like watch a movie right now, I'd watch Star Wars over a Star Trek movie. So that's kind of why I went with that.
I had that exact same thought, Jason, to ask him about, but we were going over time, so I didn't ask him earlier. Oh. We're 2 peas in a pod, Jason. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope to see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.